Okay, welcome back everybody. So in this video, we're actually going to get into the actual writing of a resume. So I'm going to ask you to do a couple things during this video. So if you don't already have a pen or paper or a separate document or something set up that you can take some notes, go ahead and pause and grab that now. Because once we know kind of the basic functions of a resume, we're going to start to put together your resume. And if you already have one, fantastic, but I would still like you to go through this process. So the question becomes, how do we write a good resume? Now, just like an assignment, some students think, well, this assignment, I can do it in 20 minutes, but it probably would take 2 hours to do that same assignment and do it well. So what that means is a lot of the time, or what I'm trying to get at, is that writing a resume is not something that we should do in a very short window. And it's why when we talked about templates or resume writing services, I suggested you think of it as a starting point, not an ending point, right? It's a draft. What we need to do is remember that it takes time, right? So this is from the Harvard Business Review. There's nothing quick or easy about crafting an effective resume, says Jane Heifetz, the resume expert and founder of Write Resumes. Don't think you're going to sit down and hammer it out in an hour. You have to think about what to say and how to say it so the hiring manager thinks, this is a person can do what I need done. After all, it's more than a resume, it's a marketing document, says John Lees, a UK-based career strategist, right? And that's exactly what it is. It's an advertisement. Just as the job posting is advertising a job, you are advertising your abilities, your experience, and your education as a potential employee. So the first thing that I want you to do is to think about a timeline. So we talked about the resume as being a little bit of a timeline. What you did, when you did it, right? How long you were there, and a little bit about maybe what you did there. And we'll talk about that more in a bit. So I want you to start by thinking about the jobs that you've had. What is the job history? And if there are gaps, that's okay. There are a lot of employers that are more forgiving now if there are gaps in people's employment timeline. Think about what order they occurred in and how long you're at each job. I know that sometimes this is tricky. You might have to go back. You might have to do some digging. You might have to look at pay stubs or something. When did you get hired and when did you leave? And know that not in the resume, because you wouldn't put it in the resume, but in an interview, a common question is, why did you leave that particular job? So just kind of have that in mind too, as long as you're thinking about it. And then think about what your accomplishments were at each job. So the importance here, and we're going to differentiate between what you accomplished versus what your duties were, right? So you want to focus on things that were measurable. If you, like Totoro, if you worked in a restaurant, you don't need to say that you waited on tables or that you took food orders. That is part of the duties that would be associated with that. If, however, Totoro were the employee of the month, that would go on there. If Totoro had an incredibly high customer satisfaction rating from an internal survey, that would go there. So accomplishments, what was actually accomplished and measurable rather than just a task. And once you do that, I want you to take some time and really think about, do you have any other volunteer work, or is there anything else you did? Did you volunteer at an event? Did you join a community trash pickup, outing? Did you go to any seminars or workshops, including online seminars or online workshops that are relevant to the specific job? Do you have any internships? Do you have any extracurricular activities? Did you play a sport? Were you a member of a club? Whatever those things were, because once you have them all laid out, then you can pick and choose what's relevant for a particular job. Did you have any mentorships where you mentored somebody or somebody mentored you? And that would be a formal mentorship, not a sort of informal mentorship. So once we have all those things, and I would encourage you actually to go ahead and pause the video and create that timeline now, then you have it. And that's going to help you for this next assignment, which is building a resume. So take some time, pause, sketch it out. I'm not collecting it. It's not an assignment at this point, but it is going to help you. So go ahead and pause and then unpause when you're ready, and we'll continue. Okay, so hopefully you paused and hopefully you have a timeline. What I want to talk about next is not just how you make a resume, but how you make that resume stand out. So we're going to go back to the Harvard Business Review for this one as part of the reading pertaining to resumes. And again, it's a lot of similar things. Number one is customize it. Make it your own. Make it match a particular job. At the top, Harvard Business Review, and I agree with this, they suggest including a 15 to 25 word summary at the top. So that would go underneath your contact information, your sort of header, and it would go before your experience. Now, 15 to 25 words is not a lot. That's half as long as a discussion board response to one of your peers. But in doing so, again, remember that hiring manager may only spend 10 to 30 seconds or whatever looking at your resume. So you want to make sure it is a solid piece of writing. And oftentimes writing something shorter is a lot more difficult than writing something longer. In doing so, you want to avoid cliches, right? So you don't want to just say highly motivated. It's empty, it doesn't show anything, or fast learner or something like that. Those are cliche and it's not really differentiating you from somebody else. Adjust the order of information to correspond with the job and the industry. As I mentioned before, if I were applying to something in the educational field, I would put my education at the top most likely, and then my experience. Don't worry about time gaps. As I mentioned previously, if there's a little bit of a gap in your employment record, that's fine. You could explain that later on in an interview or in a follow-up. Be selective. And that's be selective about your own experience, right? Don't include everything. As I mentioned when I was talking about Totoro applying for restaurants, right? If Totoro worked as a lifeguard, then there might not be a need to include lifeguard if you're applying for a restaurant position. Again, share accomplishments, not responsibilities or tasks. Make it readable. And that's not just good font, appropriate size font, but make sure that you're paying attention to how the audience, how that recipient, that reader is going to understand it. Using concise, language, using specific words, avoiding adverbs and things like that. Ask for help, right? Absolutely a document that I would ask for friends, family, partners, houseplants, goldfish, whatever. Have somebody else take a look at it. And then if you have a LinkedIn, make sure that your resume and your LinkedIn align as far as experience goes. So you want to make sure that your experience is in both places. Now, if you don't have a LinkedIn, it's probably worth, at least investigating. It's a whole other conversation about social media, but you definitely want to be careful with social media when you're looking for a job as well. It is fairly common practice these days for employers to look up your social media, see what you have, see what you post, and all of those things. So let's stick with this idea of objective versus summary. And this is where we're going to kind of end this video talking about that first little part. So like I said, between your header, all your personal information, and your experience, that 15 to 25 word little snippet usually goes right there at the top, which is either an objective or summary depending on where you're at. So an objective, if you chose to write an objective, it would be what you hope to accomplish. And usually that's because maybe you don't have a whole lot of experience. Maybe you're just starting your career. And that would be different than writing a summary, which is what you have accomplished. So if you're a little bit further along in your career, or you've worked that type of job before. So I'll give you a sort of example. When I was just starting to get into teaching at the college level, I would have put an objective at the top of my resume that said, I hope to gain tenure as an instructor of English at a community college, something like that, what I want to accomplish. Versus now, 8 years into it, I would use a summary. I would say, demonstrated track record of helping students in community college courses. And it just depends on where you're at, but it does give you an opportunity to incorporate those keywords from the job posting so that you pass through those screening softwares or pass that hiring manager who's giving your resume a blink of an eye. Now, from our reading on Indeed.com, they give 2 really good examples. So a recent high school graduate applying for a nursing program may want to include an objective. So they say motivated nursing student seeking to develop experience working with elderly patients, skilled at managing workload and building relationships with individuals from diverse backgrounds. Again, 15 to 25 words. It may be picking up on keywords like workload or relationships from that job posting. Now, a experienced nurse might use that summary. Again, they have a lot of experience. So here they might write, attentive registered nurse with 3 years of experience effectively diagnosing patient illnesses and managing treatment, known for compassionate bedside manner and ability to clearly communicate complex medical concepts to patients and families. So again, the difference between an objective and a summary is simply how much experience one has. So go ahead and take a moment, and this is, I'm going to have you pause after I give you the instructions here. Write down 5 to 10 keywords that pertain to your career or job or a specific job post. For example, I might write down education, writing, curriculum, composition, or student-centered. Then summarize your major accomplishments related to your career or job, or think about your primary goals. What do you want to ultimately attain with your job or career? And again, there's no word count for this. You're just summarizing in a draft format. So maybe I would say I worked with students of various backgrounds to improve writing and bolster confidence, and that I hold a 90% completion rate for students. Focus on specifics rather than generalizations or cliches. Right? For example, nominated as Mentor of the Year for the UW Undergraduate Symposium. That is an accomplishment. It's specific. It's not cliche. Selected to teach an honors version of English 101. Those are accomplishments. So what I want you to do is pause, try that, right? 5 to 10 keywords, summarize your major accomplishments or what you want to accomplish, and focus on specifics rather than generalizations. And then, after pre-writing, create a 3 to 5 sentence summary. Again, we're going to end up with 15 to 25 words somewhere in there, but 3 to 5 sentences is a great starting point. Now, this is important because the discussion board is going to ask you to upload or post your either summary or objectives, and that will be your post, and other people will respond to it. So that will help you in the long run as you begin to revise, so you are getting help with that. All right. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, jokes, memes, or recipes, let me know. Otherwise, I'll talk to you all.